There is this four-letter controversial C word that I don't like to use with my clients, and actually, it's beyond the scope of my practice to use this word. It stirs up a lot of discomfort in people, and it also causes a lot of disagreements with people. And of course, this four-letter C word that I'm referring to before your mind gets too far away with you is the word cure. I see this all the time. I get asked all the time, can you cure my anxiety? Is there a cure for anxiety? And I don't really use the word cure in my practice because as a board certified hypnotist, my job is not to cure, diagnose, or even treat ailments or illnesses or anything like that. My job is to help everyday ordinary people with everyday ordinary problems. It just so happens, though, that there's a lot of problems that are becoming more ordinary than they were before. But we're going to dive deep into if anxiety can be cured in today's video. And again, this is my professional opinion after working with thousands and thousands of people who have struggled with anxiety and who have overcome it. So my name is Dan Candell, by the way. If you're new to the conversation, welcome. I'm known worldwide as the Anxiety Relief Guy. If you're not new to the conversation, welcome back. Great to have you back. You might be wondering, where does this topic come from? I'm a lurker, I should say, in a lot of social media support groups. And these support groups are some of the most toxic places to hang out. And I just go on there for my own selfish, guilty pleasure entertainment. And oftentimes I see in these groups, one of them is an anxiety support group. And in one of these groups, someone posed the question, as they often do, can anxiety be cured? Or what is the best way to cure anxiety? How did you cure your anxiety? And I read the comments. And this is why I don't post on these threads or on these support groups anymore. Because whenever I post something that's meant to help someone, or when I post a technique or a tip or a tool or something like that, it's met with resistance, it's met with criticism, judgment, toxicity. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on with these people? And if I really battled with anxiety and I was in a support group, the last thing I would do is want to post something mean or hurtful to somebody else in fear that it would come back to me. And so I'm reading through these people's posts, and a lot of people are like, anxiety can never be cured. It's like an awful illness. And once you get it, you're destined for a life filled with misery and blah, blah, blah. And people literally post this shit. And someone else said the only way you can really cure anxiety is by going through years of therapy and taking medications. And someone else was like, oh, the only way you can cure anxiety is through deep meditation and deep breathing. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. And then you get the other side where people are like, you can never cure anxiety. Once you have it, it's a miserable existence, or you can only manage it. You can never cure it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is causing me anxiety. But I do look at those groups for content for my videos because it gives me really good content. So you might be wondering now, can anxiety be cured? And that is a really difficult question because it depends on your meaning of the word cure. And if cure, you mean I will never ever feel anxious ever again, or I will never feel anything uncomfortable ever again, then no. Anxiety can't be cured. And the reason why anxiety can't be cured is because anxiety isn't something to cure. That's why I don't ever use that word with my clients, because there is no cure to anxiety, because anxiety is part of the human condition. It was something that is there to keep us safe. What people mean, though, I think, is can you break free from anxiety in a way where it's no longer limiting you? It's no longer holding you back from living your life. And that's what people mean. Then yes, you can. And this is what I want to dive really deep into in this conversation. Yes, you can break free from anxiety, and it also depends on the type of anxiety. It depends on what caused it. It depends what the triggers are. It depends what your symptoms are. It depends how it affects you, how it holds you back. And I really do believe that anxiety is a spectrum. Like everything else in life, anxiety is a spectrum. And we have low functioning anxiety where people who struggle with severe panic attacks, with crippling negative thoughts, with different fears and phobias, where these people experience anxiety to the point where it literally limits almost every single thing that they do. And that's on the lower end of the functioning spectrum of anxiety, where then we have what we call high functioning anxiety. And high functioning anxiety, this is where you'll see a lot of people who are actually very successful, a lot of people who've achieved a lot of wins in their life, a lot of professionals, a lot of entrepreneurs. This is where also you see a lot of people who appear to be the most functioning ones in their family. They are taking care of people's problems, or they might be caretakers, or they might be leaders in their profession, and they might be team leaders. But these people still struggle with what we call hidden anxiety. And hidden anxiety, or high functioning anxiety, might not always manifest in the form of a panic attack. It might not necessarily hold a person back or make them feel crippled where they just can't get up out of bed, or where they won't go out and do things. People on the more high functioning side, they'll feel uncomfortable and they'll go and do stuff anyway. But they still feel uncomfortable, even though psychology tells us that avoidance is the worst possible thing you can do for anxiety, because the moment you avoid the thing that makes you feel anxious, guess what you're doing? You're convincing your mind that avoidance is an appropriate response to anxiety, when it's actually the exact opposite. Avoidance is the worst possible thing you can do if you're feeling anxious about something. This is where we get into like exposure. This is where we get into desensitization. So people more on the high functioning side, they feel anxious, they do it anyway. But anxiety in more of a high functioning person will look different. And it might look like people pleasing. It might look like perfectionism. It might look like self-doubt. It might look like worrying. So they'll procrastinate. So they appear to be lazy, or they appear to procrastinate where actually it's anxiety. They might stunt their growth or get in their own way, even though they still get things done. It's just not easy. And over here, they're still functioning, but it feels like life is a chore. And that's something that you don't need a cure for that. That's just how people function. However, it's a result of their upbringing. It's a result of their conditioning. And that's why high functioning anxiety is very different than lower functioning anxiety, to the point where a person who is more on the high functioning side, I work with them completely different than I work with a person on the lower functioning side. And because it affects them completely different. So can anxiety be cured? That, my friends, is a trick question. And I will say no, anxiety cannot be cured, because anxiety is not something to cure. In fact, a lot of people say, I never want to feel anything uncomfortable ever again, or I never want to feel upset again, or I never want to have another panic attack ever again. And then people will live in complete avoidance and resistance. And they live in the world where they're trying to resist against any anxiousness, against any panic, against any doubt, against any stress. And they'll say things to themselves like, oh my gosh, I can't keep thinking like this, or I can't keep feeling like this, or I can't keep doing this, I can't keep living like this. And guess what happens when they're in that state of resistance? What they resist will persist. So the same thing that they tell themselves, I can't think like this, I can't do this anymore, I can't feel like this anymore, or in order to be happy, I must not feel anxious. In order to live my life, I must not feel anxious. In order to go to the grocery store, I must not feel anxious, or I must not worry about feeling anxious. Guess what happens? The more people resist it, the more it's going to happen. And this is what we call anticipatory anxiety, because people aren't really afraid of going to the grocery store. They're not afraid of driving down the highway. They're afraid of the anxiety they're going to feel if they do, when that anxiety comes out and presents itself. So there are some people on this end of the spectrum. I do work first with management, and then we get to resolve, because I'm teaching them not just how to stop anxiety in its tracks, because anxiety becomes a pattern. I don't just teach them how to stop it, but I teach them how to embrace these mentalities. and these mentalities to live by so that life seems easier, so that life seems more enjoyable and they can be more present. So someone on the lower functioning side, I would work with first on management, and then we work towards resolve so they can function at a higher level. And for people who have high functioning anxiety, where it might not manifest in the form of panic attacks, it might not manifest in the form of crippling anxiety or fear, which, by the way, people who have high functioning anxiety can also be exposed to limiting fears and limiting anxieties and specific anxieties. But people over here I'll work with differently, and I'll work with them more on acquiring certain mindsets and mentalities that can help them grow out of that feeling of, oh, I must be this way because this is the way I was conditioned. And a lot of people on this side, they have limiting beliefs that they don't even realize are limiting them. Toxic patterns such as people-pleasing, toxic patterns such as perfectionism, which I mentioned before, hustle culture. And it's a very difficult place to function and to grow. Once you achieve a certain level, it's hard to grow beyond that until you start making peace with those parts of your mind. And that's why I do a lot of the subconscious and nervous system work that I do. So I know I just rattled a ton of stuff off at you. The main things to be aware of is that anxiety is a spectrum. That anxiety is not something that should or needs to be cured. It is something that can be managed, and it's something that you can make peace with, so you're no longer living in fear or anticipation of what happens if. Hopefully you also took away from this that by living in resistance and avoidance is actually going to bring more anxiety, more fear, and more anticipation, and that when you use subconscious and nervous system work, you can achieve and accomplish almost anything, and you can get out of that stuck frame of mind. One other thing I want you to, this is where I do want you to avoid this. Avoid the support groups where all they are is one big, massive friggin' dumpster fire. Just avoid those support groups that are on social media where they're not even helpful. People don't even post anything helpful. You go through and look in the support groups, and all it is just a bunch of people just bitching, moaning, and complaining about how awful their life is. And guess what that's going to do to a person who struggles with anxiety? It's going to make them fear even more. It's not going to make them feel supported. And if it does, it's going to support the problem, not the solution. I have not heard of one person that I've worked with that said, oh yeah, like I actually started feeling better by joining this online support group that was for people who feel anxious. Not once have I ever heard that. Maybe I'm biased, but confirmation bias, right? We tend to look for information that supports our belief system. So maybe I'm just a victim of confirmation bias like everybody else is. All right, my friends, hey, if you want to do some deep inner work in order to break free from those toxic patterns that you might think have been helping you out, but they're actually holding you back, so that way you can have more good days and bad days, more wins and losses, more breakthroughs than breakdowns, and so that way you can maintain your sanity even if life serves you a shit sandwich. I'm your guy. No, I'm literally that guy. I'm the anxiety relief guy. So if you would like my help, there is a link in the description of this video, or there might even be another video floating around some here that breaks down my entire process, how it works, and how we work together to achieve the goal for you to get out of your head and into your life. As always, my friends, make sure you rate, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you've had any experience with online support groups. Also, let me know which end of the spectrum you feel like you're on, the lower end of the functioning spectrum of anxiety or the higher functioning side. So let me know. As always, be well, do good, be true to who you are. Happy healing. Bye for now.